There are certain moments in life that arrive without warning and completely shift the emotional ground beneath us. One ordinary day can suddenly become unforgettable because someone you thought was gone forever appears again, carrying emotions they can no longer hide. It is not always dramatic in the way movies portray it. Sometimes it is quieter, heavier, more human than that. A look held too long, a trembling voice, eyes filled with everything they never managed to say before. And in those moments, you realize that time may create distance between people, but it does not always erase what was real between them. The person you believed had fully moved on may have spent far more time thinking about you than you ever imagined. While life continued on the surface, there were parts of them that never truly settled after losing the connection you shared. Outwardly, they may have seemed fine. They smiled in conversations, kept busy with responsibilities, and tried to move through life as though nothing deeply affected them. But internally, they were carrying unfinished emotions they did not know how to process honestly. Every distraction they used to avoid those feelings only delayed the truth they would eventually have to face. For a long time, they convinced themselves that leaving was the right decision. Maybe they believed distance would bring clarity. Maybe they thought avoiding difficult emotions would protect them from vulnerability. Sometimes people walk away not because they stop caring, but because they become overwhelmed by emotions they do not fully understand yet. Instead of confronting those emotions directly, they choose silence, avoidance, or emotional distance. At first, it feels easier. Temporary distractions make the emptiness less noticeable. Pride creates the illusion of control. But eventually, silence becomes exhausting when unresolved feelings continue returning, no matter how far someone tries to run from them. There was likely a moment that changed everything for them. Not one dramatic event, but a quiet realization that arrived unexpectedly. Perhaps they were surrounded by people, yet still felt emotionally disconnected. Perhaps they achieved something important and instinctively wanted to share it with you before remembering the distance between you now. Perhaps your absence slowly became impossible to ignore because no replacement ever carried the same sense of comfort, understanding, or emotional safety they once experienced with you. That is often how truth reveals itself, quietly, gradually, until denying it becomes harder than facing it honestly. The reason their emotions feel so intense now is not because they suddenly discovered your value overnight. It is because they finally stopped resisting what they had been feeling all along. Sometimes people need distance to recognize the emotional significance of someone who genuinely impacted their life. Not because the connection was perfect, but because it felt meaningful in ways they struggled to explain. You may have been one of the few people who truly understood parts of them they usually kept hidden from the world. And losing that kind of connection can create a silence that follows a person everywhere. When someone returns carrying visible emotion, it is rarely about seeking pity or dramatic attention. More often, it comes from emotional exhaustion. Holding regret inside for too long becomes heavy. Avoiding important conversations becomes painful. Pretending not to care eventually stops working. And when those emotions finally surface, they often arrive all at once. The tears, the hesitation, the difficulty finding words. These things happen because emotions that were buried for months or years suddenly reach the surface at the same time. But it is important to understand something clearly. Their return does not automatically erase the past or fix everything overnight. Real relationships are more complicated and more human than that. Pain does not disappear simply because someone came back. Trust does not rebuild instantly because emotions became visible. What their return truly represents is an opportunity for honesty that may never have existed before. It is a moment where both people can finally confront truths that were avoided in the past. During the time apart, both of you likely changed in ways neither fully understands yet. You learned how to continue life without them, even when it hurt. You found ways to heal, rebuild routines, and protect your emotional peace. They, meanwhile, may have been forced to confront fears they spent years avoiding. Fear of vulnerability, fear of commitment, fear of emotional dependence, fear of losing someone who genuinely mattered. Distance has a way of revealing emotional patterns people ignore while relationships are still active. What they realized through that distance is that your connection was not easily replaceable. It was not based only on attraction, familiarity, or routine. It carried emotional depth that stayed with them even after the relationship changed. You became associated with understanding, comfort, and emotional honesty in ways they did not fully appreciate at the time. And once they recognized that truth clearly, the weight of losing it became impossible to ignore. Still, growth matters more than emotion alone. Missing someone deeply does not automatically mean a healthy future is guaranteed. What matters is whether both people have gained enough self-awareness to approach each other differently than before. Their tears may be sincere, their regret may be genuine, but lasting change requires more than emotional intensity in a single moment. It requires accountability, communication, patience, and consistent effort over time. One of the most meaningful parts of their return may not be the words they speak immediately, but the vulnerability they finally allow themselves to show. Many people spend years hiding behind pride because vulnerability feels terrifying. Admitting that someone affected you deeply requires emotional courage. Admitting that you made mistakes requires humility. And admitting that losing someone changed you internally is one of the hardest truths many people ever face. So when someone finally arrives, stripped of their emotional defenses, it often means they have reached a level of honesty they avoided for a very long time. At the same time, your feelings matter equally in this moment. You are not obligated to forget your pain simply because someone returned emotionally overwhelmed. Your healing matters, your boundaries matter, the progress you made during their absence matters. It is possible to care about someone deeply while still needing clarity about whether reconnecting would truly create something healthier this time. Emotional reunions can feel powerful, but sustainable relationships are built through consistency, emotional maturity, and mutual understanding long after the intensity of the moment fades. What makes situations like this emotionally complex is that unfinished connections rarely disappear cleanly. Even when people separate physically, emotional ties can remain active beneath the surface for years. Certain conversations linger unfinished, certain feelings remain unresolved, certain people continue shaping each other's emotional lives long after silence begins. That does not always mean people are destined to reunite romantically, but it does mean some connections leave permanent emotional lessons behind. Their return may also represent something larger than reconciliation alone. It may represent growth finally happening on both sides. During separation, people are often forced to confront themselves honestly for the first time. Without the relationship distracting them from personal issues, unresolved fears and patterns become harder to ignore. They may have finally recognized how avoidance damaged the connection. They may have realized that running from emotional depth only created loneliness instead of freedom. And perhaps most importantly, they may have understood that meaningful relationships require emotional responsibility, not just feelings. The truth is that many people do not fully recognize the value of emotional safety until they lose it. They spend too much time focusing on temporary distractions, external validation, or fear-based decisions without realizing how rare genuine understanding actually is. Then one day, usually much later, clarity arrives. And when it does, it can completely reshape how they view the past, themselves, and the person they walked away from. That is why moments like this feel so emotionally overwhelming. They are not just about missing someone. They are about realizing how deeply someone influenced your inner world. They are about recognizing that certain people become connected to your growth, your healing, and your understanding of yourself in ways you never expected. And once that awareness fully settles inside someone, returning often becomes less about impulse and more about emotional truth finally demanding acknowledgement. What happens next between you depends on far more than emotion alone. It depends on honesty. It depends on whether both people can communicate openly about the past without repeating old patterns. It depends on whether healing created wisdom instead of bitterness. It depends on whether the connection can evolve into something healthier, steadier, and more emotionally balanced than before. Sometimes reunions become beautiful new beginnings because both people genuinely changed. Other times, reunions simply provide closure that was once missing. Either outcome can still hold value. What matters most is approaching the situation with awareness instead of fantasy. Real love is not proven only through dramatic emotion. It is proven through emotional maturity, accountability, respect, patience, and consistency over time. So if someone from your past suddenly returns carrying visible regret and honesty, do not rush to define the moment immediately. Allow yourself space to observe actions, words, and intentions carefully. Listen not only to their emotions, but also to the growth behind those emotions. Pay attention to whether accountability exists alongside longing, because meaningful reconnection is not about recreating the past exactly as it was. It is about determining whether two people can create something healthier with the wisdom gained through distance, loss, and self-reflection. And perhaps that is the deeper meaning behind moments like this. Sometimes, people leave not because the connection lacked value, but because they lacked the emotional understanding required to protect it properly at the time. Life then teaches them through absence what presence once tried to show them gently. By the time they return, they are no longer carrying the same certainty they once had. They return carrying humility, questions, reflection, and the realization that meaningful connections are far rarer than they once believed. Prepared to see beyond the tears into the transformation behind them. Prepared to recognize that some connections do not end when people walk away. They pause, they wait, and when the time is right, they return in the most unexpected, emotional, and undeniable way. Stay present, because what comes next will reveal what those tears were really trying to say. My beloved child, what unfolded after those tears is something very few people ever witness, because most reunions never reach this level of raw truth. When the crying slowed and the silence became heavy, they finally looked at you with eyes that were no longer hiding anything. In that moment, you were not seeing the version of them who left. You were seeing someone stripped of defenses, someone who had been forced to confront every wrong turn, every avoided conversation, every moment they chose distance over honesty. Their voice trembled, not because they were weak, but because they were standing at the edge of a truth they could no longer escape. They realized that returning was not about asking for forgiveness. It was about confessing something that had been buried too deep for too long. The shock was not that they came back. The shock was that they came back changed in a way that could not be undone. And this change is the key to understanding why this story is unfolding now and not before. What they revealed next was not dramatic on the surface, but its weight was unbearable. They admitted that leaving you was never about losing love, it was about being terrified of it. They had never experienced a connection that mirrored their flaws without judgment and their dreams without pressure. You saw them clearly, and that clarity scared them more than rejection ever could. Instead of rising to the level of the bond, they tried to escape it. They thought time would dilute what they felt. They thought distance would weaken the pull. But every attempt to move on only made the truth louder. They carried guilt into new beginnings. They carried your presence into every quiet moment. And eventually, they understood something painful. No matter where they went, they were still carrying you inside them. That realization did not bring comfort. It brought collapse. Because once they accepted it, returning became inevitable. At this point, you may wonder why they did not come back sooner, and that question matters more than you realize. The truth is, they were not capable of returning honestly until now. Before this moment, any reunion would have been incomplete, driven by loneliness or nostalgia. This return is different. It is driven by awareness. They finally saw the pattern of their own behavior. They recognized how fear disguised itself as independence, how silence pretended to be strength, how running away felt safer than staying vulnerable. When this awareness hit them, it did not come gently. It arrived like a sudden awakening that made everything else feel false. The life they were living no longer aligned with who they truly were. And in that realization, your name became unavoidable, not as a memory, but as a mirror of the self they had been avoiding. The most intense part of this return is not what they said out loud, it is what they struggled to say. There is a sentence they rehearsed countless times during their absence, a sentence they feared would change everything once spoken. This sentence carries the weight of accountability, not excuses. It carries ownership, not justification. They wanted you to know that they finally understood the consequences of their choices, that walking away did not protect either of you, that silence did not heal anything, and that pretending to be unaffected only delayed the inevitable reckoning. When they collapsed in tears, it was because that sentence was trying to break free. It was the moment when truth demanded expression, regardless of the outcome. This is why their return feels so heavy, so emotional, so impossible to ignore. Now understand this clearly, because this is where your role becomes central. This reunion is not a promise. It is an invitation to witness who they have become, and to decide what aligns with your truth now. Destiny does not force repetition. It offers resolution. Whether that resolution becomes reconciliation or closure depends on clarity, not emotion alone. The reason this story holds so much power is because it is unfinished by design. Something greater is at work, guiding both of you toward a moment of honesty that could not be rushed. What happens next will reveal whether this return is meant to rebuild or to release with understanding instead of pain. My beloved child, as the silence settled between you after everything that was confessed, something far more intense than words began to unfold. This was not the silence of confusion, it was the silence of realization. You could feel it in the air, heavy and undeniable, as if the universe itself had paused to witness what would happen next. They were no longer crying, yet their eyes remained wet, not from weakness, but from the weight of finally being seen without masks. In that stillness, they understood something that had taken them too long to learn. Returning to you did not erase the damage, it only exposed it. And yet, instead of fear, there was relief in that exposure. Because for the first time, nothing was being hidden. No stories were being edited. No emotions were being diluted. This moment was raw, irreversible, and powerful. And the reason your heart felt conflicted was because you were standing at the edge of a truth that could change the direction of both your lives. They began to explain what truly happened during their absence, not in terms of events, but in terms of inner consequences. Every choice they made without you felt incomplete. Every attempt to move forward felt forced. They realized that they had mistaken intensity for instability, and depth for danger. Loving you required them to confront parts of themselves they had avoided for years. Their fears were not created by you simply revealed them. And instead of healing those fears, they chose escape. What they did not anticipate was that escape would magnify everything they tried to suppress. Away from you, their life did not become simpler. It became louder, more chaotic, more disconnected. And the clarity they are carrying now did not come easily. It came after repeated disappointment, after realizing that no matter who stood beside them, something essential was missing. That missing piece was not romance alone. It was alignment. It was the sense of being fully known. As they spoke, you may have noticed something subtle but important. They were not asking you to save them. They were not promising perfection. They were acknowledging responsibility. This is what makes this moment rare. Most returns are driven by need. This one is driven by accountability. They finally recognize that love is not proven by dramatic gestures, but by consistency, presence, and courage during uncomfortable moments. Their collapse earlier was not a performance. It was the breaking point of someone who had been carrying too much unspoken truth, and now that truth was standing between you, waiting to be acknowledged. The intensity you feel is not pressure. It is recognition. Recognition that this connection forced growth in both of you, even in separation. And that growth has brought you to a crossroads that cannot be ignored. There is also something happening within you, and it matters just as much. Hearing their truth does not automatically erase the pain you experienced. Your journey during their absence was real. Your healing was real. The strength you built without them was earned. This is why this reunion feels so complex. It is not about returning to who you were. It is about deciding who you are now, and whether this connection still aligns with that version of you. Destiny does not demand sacrifice of self. It demands awareness. And in this moment, you are being asked to observe, not rush, to feel, not react, to understand that sometimes people return not to reclaim what they lost, but to acknowledge what they failed to protect. That acknowledgement itself is a turning point, regardless of the outcome. Understand this clearly, because it is the core of everything unfolding. This return was not meant to confuse you. It was meant to empower you. You are no longer waiting for answers. They are standing in front of you, spoken with honesty and vulnerability. What comes next is not written yet, and that is intentional. Some stories reunite to rebuild. Some reunite to bring closure without bitterness. Both outcomes require truth, and truth is finally present here. The reason this feels like a once-in-a-lifetime moment is because it is rare for two people to meet again with awareness instead of illusion. Stay grounded, stay observant, because the next phase will reveal whether this connection is meant to transform into something stronger or to be released with peace instead of unanswered questions. My beloved child, what followed was not a dramatic decision or an emotional outburst, but something far more powerful. Time slowed. You could sense that both of you were standing inside a moment that would be remembered for years, regardless of what choice was made. They were waiting, not for your forgiveness, but for your clarity. And that difference matters more than it seems. For the first time, they were not trying to control the outcome. They were allowing truth to exist without manipulation. This is why their return feels different from every apology you may have heard before. There was no urgency to fix everything instantly. There was only a deep understanding that some things cannot be rushed without losing their meaning. The weight of this realization sat heavily in the room, because both of you knew that whatever happened next would permanently redefine the connection you once shared. As the conversation continued, something unexpected surfaced. They admitted that coming back was not their original plan. Life forced them here through a series of quiet realizations that stacked up until denial became impossible. They spoke about moments when they almost reached out but stopped themselves, moments when pride whispered that staying away was safer. Yet every delay only intensified the pull. What finally broke their resistance was the understanding that avoidance had become a habit, not a solution. They saw how this pattern had affected not just you, but every meaningful bond in their life. And standing in front of you now, they were no longer running from that pattern. They were naming it, owning it. This ownership is what made their presence feel heavier than their absence ever did. You may have noticed something else that startled you. They were no longer idealizing the past. They were not romanticizing what you once were together. Instead, they were acknowledging the reality of it, the mistakes, the missed chances, the emotional immaturity that cost them something irreplaceable. This honesty is uncomfortable, but it is also rare. Most people return with stories designed to soften the truth. They returned with clarity designed to face it. And that clarity changes the power dynamic completely. You are no longer the one waiting. You are the one evaluating. This shift is intentional. It restores balance. It reminds you that your time, your emotions, and your growth are valuable, regardless of the outcome of this reunion. Inside you, something equally important is happening. You are realizing that closure does not always look like distance. Sometimes it looks like understanding. And understanding does not mean acceptance. It means awareness without illusion. The reason this moment feels overwhelming is because it is stripping away the fantasy that once surrounded this connection. What remains is something more grounded, more real, and therefore more demanding. You are being asked to listen not just to their words, but to your own inner response. Not the fear of losing them again, not the hope of returning to what was, but the truth of what feels aligned now. This is where your power lies, in choosing from clarity, not nostalgia. This part of the story exists to remind you of one essential truth. People do not always return to reclaim a place in your life. Sometimes they return to acknowledge the impact you had on theirs. There comes a moment, in certain connections, where the conversation stops being about the past and starts becoming about truth. Not the dramatic kind of truth spoken in anger or desperation, but the quiet kind that arrives after enough time has passed for both people to see clearly. That is where this story now stands. What once felt unfinished is no longer driven by confusion or emotional chaos. Something calmer has taken its place, something more honest. Whether this path eventually leads toward rebuilding the relationship or toward peaceful separation, the return itself has already changed both people involved. It brought honesty where silence once lived. It replaced assumptions with understanding, and most importantly, it restored dignity to places where pain had once settled too deeply. The truth did not arrive all at once. It surfaced slowly, through pauses in conversation, through moments where emotions became too heavy to hide behind pride anymore. They struggled to maintain eye contact because they understood something they had spent most of their life avoiding. Loving someone deeply is not always comfortable. Real love asks people to confront themselves honestly. It challenges old habits, exposes emotional immaturity, and demands accountability in ways many people are unprepared for. Standing in front of you again forced them to recognize that fear had shaped many of their past decisions. Not fear of you, but fear of vulnerability, fear of responsibility, and fear of losing something they did not yet understand how to protect. When they finally broke emotionally, it was not only because of regret, it was because they understood, perhaps for the first time, the true weight of what they could lose permanently. In the past, they walked away without fully understanding your value. They assumed time would always leave the door open. They believed connection could simply be revisited later when emotions felt easier to manage. but distance changed their perspective. Your absence forced them to see the difference between temporary attachment and genuine emotional alignment. And once they understood that difference, everything inside them shifted. What they confessed was not an attempt to persuade you, it was an acknowledgement of reality. They admitted that your absence forced them to confront a kind of emptiness they could not fill through distractions, achievements, or other people. Not loneliness in the simple sense, but the realization that meaningful connection cannot be replaced once it is truly understood. They recognized that what existed between you was rare, not because it was perfect, but because it felt deeply aligned with who they were beneath all the fear and confusion. That realization humbled them more than any heartbreak ever had before. At the same time, something inside you had changed too. You were no longer standing in front of them seeking reassurance or validation. The version of you that once needed answers had evolved. Now, instead of reacting emotionally to their return, you were observing carefully. You understood something important through your own healing. Love without consistency eventually becomes illusion, and words without action lose meaning, no matter how beautiful they sound. This understanding did not make you cold or guarded. It made you discerning. It taught you how to separate temporary emotion from genuine transformation. That is why this reunion feels different from anything that happened before. Two people are standing in front of each other, not as the versions they once were, but as people shaped by experience, distance, reflection, and growth. The imbalance that may have existed before no longer controls the connection. You are no longer chasing clarity because you already carry it within yourself. And clarity changes everything. It creates self-respect. It creates emotional steadiness. It allows you to listen without abandoning your own boundaries in the process. They sense this change in you immediately, and instead of trying to overpower it with emotion or promises, it humbles them. For the first time, they fully understand that returning to someone does not guarantee a place in their future. It only creates an opportunity for honesty. That realization changes the way they approach you now. There is less urgency to convince you, and more willingness to listen, less desire to control the outcome, and more acceptance of whatever truth eventually reveals itself. This shift matters because genuine growth often appears not through dramatic declarations, but through restraint, patience, and accountability. They now understand that trust cannot be rebuilt through emotional intensity alone. Trust rebuilds slowly through behavior repeated consistently over time, through showing up honestly, through respecting boundaries instead of trying to rush closeness, through allowing actions to speak louder than temporary feelings. This understanding is still new to them, but it is visible in the way they carry themselves around you now. There is more care in their words, more thoughtfulness in their silence, more awareness of the impact their actions have on another person. Meanwhile, your own inner clarity continues deepening. You are no longer imagining ideal outcomes or clinging to possibilities out of fear of losing them. Instead, you are evaluating reality as it unfolds in front of you. You notice the difference between remorse and responsibility, between someone feeling emotional in a moment and someone genuinely willing to grow beyond old patterns. This awareness changes the energy entirely because your decisions are no longer rooted in longing. They are rooted in self-respect, and self-respect transforms every relationship dynamic. Healing does not make the heart harder, it makes it wiser. It teaches discernment. It teaches people how to love without abandoning themselves. That is the place you are standing in now. You are no longer afraid of endings because you understand your worth independently of another person's ability to recognize it. That confidence creates calmness within you. a quiet kind of strength that does not need to prove itself loudly. And strangely, that strength inspires deeper honesty from them too. They begin admitting things they once avoided entirely. They acknowledge that one of the hardest parts of returning was accepting the possibility that you may have outgrown the version of them who once mattered in your life. That realization hurt them deeply because it forced them to confront an uncomfortable truth. Love neglected repeatedly does not remain unchanged forever. Sometimes people grow beyond what once hurt them. Sometimes healing creates distance from old patterns that no longer feel emotionally safe. Accepting that possibility required humility they had never fully practiced before. But instead of reacting defensively, they chose honesty. They admitted that they had underestimated your emotional depth, your patience, and your ability to walk away with dignity when necessary. They realized too late that your love was not weakness. It was sincerity, and sincerity is rare. This understanding separates their current return from every regret they may have experienced before. It is no longer about wanting comfort or familiarity. It is about confronting truth directly, without hiding behind excuses. At this stage, the connection itself begins changing form. The urgency fades. The illusion fades. What remains is something quieter, but far more real. Two people sitting with truth instead of fantasy. Two people trying to understand whether growth has created alignment or simply understanding. And surprisingly, there is peace inside that honesty, even when uncertainty still exists. Because clarity, even painful clarity, is lighter than confusion. You may notice that your own energy feels calmer now, not because everything is resolved, but because you are no longer fighting yourself emotionally. You understand that whatever happens next must unfold naturally through action, consistency, and time. You are no longer interested in promises alone. You are watching behavior. You are paying attention to patterns. You are allowing reality to reveal itself slowly instead of rushing toward emotional conclusions. That patience is a sign of healing, not detachment. They recognize this too, and rather than resisting your boundaries, they begin respecting them. This is another important sign of transformation. The version of them that once feared emotional depth now understands the importance of emotional safety. The version that once avoided accountability now accepts responsibility without immediately seeking forgiveness in return. They are beginning to understand that if there is to be a future between you, it cannot be built on urgency, fear, or emotional pressure. It must be built carefully, transparently, and honestly over time. At the same time, there is also acceptance forming within them regarding another possibility. That closure can sometimes be an act of love too. If this connection ultimately leads toward peaceful separation instead of reunion, they understand now that forcing attachment would only repeat old pain. Real love cannot survive through control. It survives through mutual alignment, trust, and willingness from both people. That understanding softens the energy between you. It removes desperation. It creates space for truth to exist without manipulation. This is where the real meaning of their return becomes clear. It was never meant to drag you backward into old wounds or unresolved cycles. It was meant to meet you at the place you have both grown into separately. Whether this journey continues together or ends with understanding, it has already fulfilled an important purpose. It replaced confusion with awareness, silence with honesty, pain with perspective. That alone makes the return meaningful. Now the future no longer depends on emotional intensity or nostalgic memories. It depends on alignment, on whether both people are capable of building something healthier than what existed before. and alignment cannot be forced. It reveals itself gradually through everyday choices, emotional maturity, and consistent effort. That is why this moment feels so significant. It is not simply a reunion. It is a turning point, shaped by truth instead of illusion. What comes next will not be decided through promises spoken in emotional moments. It will be revealed quietly through actions over time, through consistency, through patience, through respect, and whatever decision eventually unfolds, it will come from strength rather than fear. That changes everything, because when people choose from awareness instead of longing, the outcome, whatever it may be, becomes honest, peaceful, and deeply aligned with who they have become.